Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Strength and Knowledge podcast. I have been interacting on Twitter a lot more over the course of the quarantine, and I've just been very, very impressed with some people that I've interacted with. One of them is this next guest, and he is not only a multi-location private practice owner, but those locations are in 3 different states. Overall, I really feel like I've aligned with him on a lot of the things that he talks about with regards to, in particularly, company culture, but also just the mindset surrounding roles of your team members in the workplace, the focus on the patient or client, whatever you're going to call those. But nonetheless, I'm very, very excited to introduce to you today, Craig Phifer. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Josh. I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely, man. So, first things first, obviously, it would be great to hear about your dive into PT and the why behind PT, but I'd rather hear, at what point did you decide that you were going to be an entrepreneur, and what was that journey like after you made that decision?
It was an interesting journey. I'm 13 years out of school now, but 2 years out is when I would say I started kind of noticing that healthcare kind of sucked for PTs, and that's when you look around and you're talking to those different people from your PT class who are starting to think about transitioning careers, or they're changing jobs a lot, or they're just people who it seems like there's just a lot of really crappy jobs out there. And that's when I was just like, man, burnout is getting crazy. There's all these people who I know from PT school. They're smarter than I am. They're much more capable than I am. And they're the ones who are dropping out. Why are we having that issue? So that was when started to focus a little bit more on, it's not a clinical problem that we have, because clinically we're doing so much right in healthcare that, look at the various Fritz studies or whatever. PT is a big component of saving healthcare, but we can't do that if we're all burnt out in the process. It doesn't work. That doesn't work for us, doesn't work for our patients. So then from there, started to get more and more interested in the business things that were causing the burnout, because I really believe it's more of a business issue than a clinical issue. And from there, just progressed and started running a practice for somebody else. And we grew and grew, and things were going awesome. And then that business, they merged with another practice. And that's when you started to see the cultural shift from, all right, we're going to take really great care of patients, and when we do that, we'll make some money, to we're going to make a lot of money, and if there's time left, we'll take good care of people, And at that point, kind of fought that, and people talk about taking that leap as an entrepreneur. I knew I had to go start my own business. I got pushed, so I actually got fired from that company. And we were starting to kind of plan a bit of an exit. This may not go well. We're over here talking about the same 2 things, and that we need to take really great care of people, and we need to be profitable doing it. But we're just talking about them in completely the opposite order, and that might not be compatible. So we were kind of planned for that. And from that point, we basically, that I got fired was clear, all right, we're not on the same page here, so we're just going to go do our own thing. And it was myself, and we actually have 9 owners of our company. And we started 4 locations inside of 6 months. So we already had the model. It was crazy. And there were a lot of things that probably weren't great for my health in that standpoint. But we started 4 locations inside of 6 months because we already knew our model worked. We bet really big because we could. We knew it worked. We were already doing it somewhere else. And then we'd say, we have all these 9 clinicians who we know this works in our community, but now you have this hometown that you want to go back to, and that you'd always wanted to go back to, and there's no good PT options there. Well, that's a great place for us to start an office. And we did that, and that's how we got the 4 locations up and running in 6 months, and now we've added a couple more since then. Long story, sorry, but
that's amazing.
The crazy entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest, I had no idea that you had 9 owners. So I'm already learning things as we're on this conversation. A couple things that I'm hearing, and you can kind of help clarify and fill in gaps here, but this conversation between shareholders and stakeholders, right? Mm-hmm. A focus maybe on solely metrics or solely finances, and then a shift towards stakeholders where we're accounting for all people involved, all members of your team, not just the clinical staff, but also the clerical staff and the people in the community. I would say that to a certain extent, the best businesses are going to be able to balance focusing on people, right, and all stakeholders involved in that organization, both inside the four walls and outside of the four walls, and also make sure that they're taking care of the house, so to speak, with the finances. So at what point did you realize that you could kind of have this blend? And is there anything in particular that you feel like is a key to you just kind of keeping on this course that you're on?
The biggest key for us, like when we started the business, really, we thought we had this like really like well planned out, good thought out model. Really all we had was we had a way that we'd say financially, we can make it work to put one patient together the entire time throughout even a course of care. And that's like all we had. And it turned like that was enough, like figuring it out financially. So when you know, like what's the 80-20 rule that, 20% of what you do makes 80% of the difference. So far, we've just kind of honed further in on that 20% and said, we got to nail this stuff and be really, really good at that. Because when we only spend our money on this 20% of things that really matter, and we're not like out there like spending, exorbitant resources on like advertising, and we don't have the nicest, newest space or stuff or anything like that. We're not spending those dollars here because we're investing in that relationship with patients and with communities. That's what allows us to grow the way we have. So when we basically spend the money on our team and on our communities, on the people, right? That's what has allowed us to kind of put everything together. So when you start off like with the pandemic, it was, all right, well, we're not going to have a great financial year. That's pretty clear. We had no idea that there's going to be, like a PPP process that worked out okay. But initially it was, all right, what do we have to do so that we don't have to cut hours and that we don't have to cut pay for anyone? And we built a telehealth program in 4 days. And we saw like we went from doing 0 telehealth to doing, I think it was like 100 visits in our first week. And then I think we got up to like around 200 telehealth visits, which was way lower than what we would have had in office. But it was enough that we're generating enough revenue to keep the business going and keep putting our people first. And because we had a history of doing that, we had so many people jump in and say like, listen, like I want to help. I want to build this program and I want to do this. So like the overlap of how do you put people first and how do you make that work financially is just focusing on the things that truly, truly matter in that process and getting rid of the fluff.
Yeah. And I think what I think of hearing you is 2 words, social capital. And I think that outside of just taking care of your team in the house, you did a great job with regards to pivoting to telehealth, which, as we know, is not favorable reimbursement-wise, right? We're not doing that because we're getting a 1-to-1 with regards to in-person service. We're making sure that we're maintaining connectivity with somebody that honestly is in a position of need. They have so much uncertainty. They probably have us carved into their routine. There's a certain enjoyable aspect to connecting with our staff, and the fact that due to all of the uncertainty surrounding COVID, they might have been in a position where they were without that connection. So jumping into telehealth quickly allows you to maintain a connection, or potentially even for somebody brand new, develop a connection during a really, really crazy time in society. But getting back to social capital, I think it's something that you can be a business owner and focused on that, or you can be somebody who's just a young PT and maybe has business aspirations. Mm-hmm. What do you do to focus on developing connectivity outside of your 4 walls, whether it's prior to you opening up a new location or when you already have that location up and running?
Oh, that's an awesome question. It's you're exactly right. If anybody has aspirations doing it, like this is where to start, building that social capital. And for us, it is, we really care about making any area that we're going to be in. Can we meaningfully make that area healthier and happier? all right, if we look at, we can do that. If there's somebody there who's already doing that, like that's just not a great opportunity for us. We're going to support them in doing it. But if we can be a part of that community, that ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, and we can do that, then all right, that's great. Now, who are the other players who are doing that? And you actually wrote an article that's coming out in Impact, where I read it and I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like the same stuff. Like where you're saying we're targeting other medical professionals, we're targeting fitness professionals, we're targeting youth sports, we're targeting just community initiatives in general. I think there were 5 for you, and it's basically get with those different organizations. And if you're a PT practice, you're going to need a family doctor to send patients to, right? Because how many people come in to see you who genuinely don't have a family doctor and who need that's a really important element of healthcare, where reach out to that family doctor, not just because you want them to send patients to you. Find a family doctor that you really want to send patients to, because I promise you, you'll probably send just as many that way as the other. Find fitness professionals that when you're like, I want to know that somebody's going to help take this patient to the next level when they want that, find those people and figure out how to send them patients. When it's mental health professionals, because goodness knows that is a drastically underused service for our patients. Find the people in your community who you want to send patients to and connect with them. Same thing with any kind of community organization that's doing helpful charitable work or whatever. Get with those people and start forming connections, start building relationships. And in those discussions, you can also ask them, like, who else should I know? Who else should I be talking to? And they will probably point you gladly to 2 or 3 more people that you should know. And that's just how you build that essentially like web of community connections, where you're inserting yourself right into it, and you're going to play a meaningful role in health and happiness in that community.
Man, I'm with you. And you call it a web. Sometimes I'll call it an ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to really figure out how you can get almost this multifaceted like seep or reach into the community. For us, yeah, like you mentioned, it's medical, fitness, the business community, youth sports, and then the schools. Those are kind of our big 5 hubs. And when I think about those, I think it's very, very similar to like when you reach out to a mentor. You go to somebody, you express your intent, you figure out maybe some things that you think might benefit them before then coming into your ask, so to speak. Yeah. So and honestly, this morning we had a local soccer organization in, actually right before our call. That's why I was a little bit late jumping on. But somebody who said, we are working with a local PT group first, and we can get into competition and collaboration later. But we have a league that is all across the DMV. And, for everybody that doesn't know, that's the DC metro, right, area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. But there's a league that goes on, and we have a little bit more of a spread across the DC region. So he was like, in Frederick, we're not going to be able to align with you as much, but we have solutions here. But that all started from a simple ask. Hey, this is who we are. This is what we would like to accomplish. This is how we think we can help you. What do you think? And he said, hey, let's meet. Let's put something together. I might not have exactly what you had in mind originally, but because you expressed the intent and you tried to come up with some potential solutions for some problems that I was having, here's where I think you can insert yourself. And I think that goes hand in hand with mentorship, where I'm not sure what your experience is, and I would love to hear that, because a lot of people need mentorship in the PT profession. But going to somebody and saying, hey, I see where you are. I'd like to be potentially where you are in a similar space. Here's what I can potentially do for you. Would you mind making some time for me and allowing me to pick your brain? But getting to that mentorship side and the gaps with regards to PT mentorship, and knowing that you're doing such a good job of that for others, what are some things that you would recommend to some of the aspiring PTs out there that want to jump into private practice?
Oh man, like you nailed so many things right there, as far as understanding that like what we care about and what other people might care about are actually different. Like there's shared interests, but like when you talk to like a soccer group or whoever, you have to understand what they want, what their problems, what their frustrations are, because that's really what you're trying to solve. And I bet when you solve some of their frustrations, that's gonna be great for you too. And exact same thing from a mentorship perspective of somebody reaches out, and mentorship should be more on, like, if I understand what you want out of this and you can come with, here's how I can help you as well. That's how I can create more time for talking to somebody. From a business standpoint, it is the skill you just talked about of being able to get in the community and being able to do it like that, that I would tell somebody first and foremost. First of all, like, you got to know yourself, like, well enough to know the direction you want to head with your career. Because as you've seen, like, business isn't something you get into like wishy-washy. Like, oh, I'm going to start my own practice. Nah, I might like it, or maybe it'll be okay. It's just like, no, you jump in. Like, you got to be kind of all in on that, or else it's not going to go well. So, like, I understand a lot of people have those reservations. I tell people, and what I want PTs to understand is that any PT can start a successful private practice. Financially, from any aspect, you can have a successful practice. Not every PT should. So identifying, if you're one of the people who want to deal with that, I want total autonomy, and I also want to accept the complete responsibility that comes with that full level of autonomy. Like, that's when you're golden. And after you establish that, then it's how do I do a better job now? Because my entire career in PT school has been learning about people from like a just a non-business standpoint. The fact of we think that everybody is going to care about, like, oh, I can make your movement more functional, or we think they're all going to care about, like, oh, like the things that we as PTs care about, and they don't. So we need to get better at speaking their language and meeting them where they are and understanding what their real challenges and frustrations are. Because as a business person, when you solve those, then you can solve the things that you want to do. But you got to start with what's really on their mind.
Yeah, and I think that just reminds me of something that we've been talking about a lot more internally, and it's the difference between internal voice and external voice. Internal voice is the conversation among our team, right? We might communicate things in a manner that aligns a little bit more with our educational background, which we might have the ability to dive a mile deep into. But for people that are just coming in, they're going through this experience associated with an injury, managing it in their day-to-day, all of these other things on their plate outside of a physical therapy education. They want the quick mouthpiece that you're able to hopefully provide them in a manner which is easy to explain, it's easy for them to own, and even potentially communicate to others. But I think that's something that really has been more of a byproduct of finding gaps in my own personal, business background. For you, I know that you got your master's in health administration. I don't know at what time that was, and what other things have you really done to shore up your business background, especially assuming that, like myself, I got 1 day of business PT when I was in DPT school.
Yeah, it's but we did a joke of a project for like starting your own office in PT school that was, I mean, so far from reality, it's crazy. I finished my MHA 10 years ago. So people ask me like, oh, how do you feel about that? Should I get an MBA? Should I get an MHA or whatever? And like, my answer is like, probably not. Like 10 years ago, it's kind of wild to think about, but the learning opportunities that we have available online through social media, through whatever, they weren't the same 10 years ago. So it was the right answer for me, but I wouldn't tell somebody to do it right now. Ultimately, now I teach, I help teach the business class at the University of Evansville. So now I'm helping through the professor that I work with there, Phil Plisky. I'm helping like bring them, hey, here's a really realistic model to bring your clinic to life. But I know that's still not many PT schools are getting that. So for the most part, I do think the private practice section of the APTA has some awesome resources. And I think for the most part, the greatest resource is always the people. So building those connections and being able to ask like the things you have learned over the last, like 5 years, Josh, like insane, right? Like when I think about how far like we've grown as a company and how much I've grown as a person, like to be able to pick your brain for one of these students for a half hour or whatever and come in with some really good questions, like that is like, there are literally thousands of dollars of value in somebody being able to pick your brain for 30 minutes, So it's really getting out there and through social media and through interacting with various professionals. Through the private practice section has a tab where you can find, hey, who's the experts in this content category? I get probably like 5 emails a week because I'm listed as like content expert on some things in private practice section of people just reaching out and saying, hey, I have a question on this. Can you help me? And I'm one of probably 100 people on that site doing that. So that's a great resource. Like you have to invest a little bit in any of these, like whether it's social media, you have to invest your time and energy. If it's private practice section, there's a little bit of a financial investment. So ultimately you have to decide as a PT student or as a young PT that this is something that I want to do. And I'm going to invest some element of myself into this, my time, my money, my energy, et cetera, and start building connections. And then if you decide that, okay, this is for me, there's like, I have a course through the Private Practice Rebellion, my kind of passion project where I help PTs start their own practices, where I essentially walk you from very step one of planning to getting your doors open, how to start a private practice. And that's not the only course available online to do that. There's probably 10 of them. Like I don't even, like I know Karen Litzy has one that she has built. I know there's others out there as well. So there are resources available, and you don't have to pay to get like a $50,000 MBA. You can get all the pieces you need from interacting online and through the private practice section, and then maybe taking a $2,000 online course or something like that. Save yourself $40,000 and get all the knowledge you need.
Yeah, and I think I'll kind of piggyback on that. And you mentioned some really, really good physical therapy specific resources. Obviously, there's tons of people out there. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Private Practice Rebellion, definitely check it out. I know there's other physical therapy mentorship programs out there. You mentioned Karen Litzy. I can think of a couple others out there, whether or not it's Greg Todd or Aaron LeBauer or Danny Mata, some of these other people that maybe are a little bit more in the cash pay space. But I would say you probably can learn a little bit about both in-network and out-of-network models in any of these courses, given just the foundations of business are relatively similar. But something that I've had a lot of success with, and I don't know if you have as well, but looking outside of the PT profession. I started in like SCORE mentorships. I got a mentor through SCORE, which is a very general business resource place. They had webinars. I remember going down and sitting in a workshop in terms of figuring out how to navigate the lease process, right? So actually going through a lease negotiation. And then the Small Business Development Center was another place. Diane McFarland, I will always remember her sending out an email a couple days before the beginning of the next month. And I'd be like, Diane, plug me in for this and this and this and this. I met our HR person in one of those where I was trying to learn a little bit more about HR. And then fortunately, one of my mentors, and I'll get to that in a second here, was a part of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, which was hosted in Baltimore. I went through that. That was probably one of the most transformational things ever, really locking arms with what seemed like a more in the trenches and practical version of an MBA, because everybody there was already a business owner. So they were already going through things. You were sharing things involving different industries, different phases of businesses. But that was recommended to me by my mentor. My mentor, I should say two big mentors. They are the owner of Soldier Fit, which is, I'm trying to think if they have 17 or 18 locations at this point, fitness franchise. So really focusing on more military-styled boot camp and military-styled workouts. But going to Danny originally and saying, Danny, first, A, I don't know what I'm doing. B, you look like you know what you're doing. I might not know certain things, but here's what I do know. Would you mind carving some time out for me? I'll do my best to make sure that this is mutually beneficial. Mm-hmm. And going in there, and he really just opened books. I mean, I'm just extremely grateful for him. He gave me about an hour and a half of his time, and you just remember just writing notes. You're just writing notes. You're like feverishly, you have all these questions, and he's just feeling like he's unlocking all of these secrets. Probably very, very basic looking back on it now. But for you, with regards to mentors or anything outside of the PT industry, like what continues to guide you when you're in a more mature business phase, like your company is in right now? And I didn't mention it earlier, but Rehabilitation and Performance Institute is the company that you're a part of. Yeah.
So I will say this, because I've kind of followed your journey and some of the other PTs online that I really think are doing an awesome job. Like a Jerry Durham would be a great example of somebody who I think teaches some things incredibly well. And to a person, they all have had significant mentorship outside of physical therapy from a business perspective. What healthcare tends to do is tend to look at things in this box of we can't do that because, health insurance, or we can't do that because this. We find all the reasons why you can't make something work, when that's not what anybody else in business does. It's just what healthcare does. So learning business from outside of healthcare and then taking all those things and applying them in ways that nobody else in healthcare is, that is a way to make your business just take off. Like Rehab to Perform has taken off. So finding those mentorship opportunities. Now what I find is I am so willing to pay people for their time and expertise. I will pay if you can help me solve this one problem, because my problems are really, really specific now, or the things that really unlock that next level. I would pay somebody $1,000 for an hour of their time to help me solve a specific issue. So I want to find the people who are really, really knowledgeable about whatever the problem I'm having is, and I will gladly pay them for their time now. At first, we're all PTs, we're kind of cheap, and it's hard to really part with those money. But yeah, it's kind of weird, because ultimately what we want as a profession is we want people to pay us for our time and our expertise. And the best way to get comfortable with asking people to pay you for your time and expertise is to pay other people for their time and expertise. As soon as you get comfortable saying, I don't know that question, I better ask a good accountant for how to work that out, or man, that's a really great legal question. That is worth the $300 an hour I'm going to pay my lawyer to answer it, as opposed to me Googling things for 6 hours and ending up knowing nothing more than I did, or oh, that's a really great front office question of how to integrate all that into that. Man, that is worth me getting on the phone with Jerry Durham and paying him for his time to answer that question,
No, and if I think of three areas in particular, especially ones that we didn't go to school for, but you already mentioned one of them, but a lawyer.
Oh man, yeah.
Human resources, which if you're trying to scale and add staff, right, just remove yourself from HR. I mean, the quicker that you can remove yourself and just put certain things in place, the better. I found, like I said, I found our lady Nicole. She's tremendous. Found her at an SBDC course, but I can't imagine, especially in a year like this year, where we would be without her. And then the third piece, and you mentioned Jerry's name, but the front desk certification was an absolute game changer. Nobody goes to school or really has anything out there besides him with regards to front desk and more clerical oriented tasks, customer service experience. You hear people talk about how important it is, but I did not know until we paid for that and went through it. And now it's just it's a mainstay in what we do. Have you, had similar experiences in terms of other things that maybe aren't even thought of with regards to business and business development?
Oh shoot! I mean, obviously, Jerry was the big one, but you don't realize because we want to think that we're the show so much as PTs. You don't realize how much the doing it well from a front office and from a back office standpoint really, really matters. The back office piece as well of understanding not just like, oh, we need to get paid for what we do. I think everybody understands that. But the ways in which you do that reflect how your business operates. What do the patient statements look like? Like, how many business owners have no idea what a patient statement looks like and what they're actually looking at, how confusing that freaking thing is. And thus, like, they're getting all these extra phone calls because they're dealing with confusion. Nobody wants to call you on the phone anymore, right? So, like, by the time they're having to do that and they're having to talk to your back office team because it's probably inconvenient in general, they're already frustrated, and it's already bringing down the experience they had with you. So understanding that complete ecosystem, that when somebody starts with your practice all the way around to finishing up that they're making their last payment or whatever to you, that every bit of that interaction matters. So the back office is a big one. And for us, it was, we have somebody she's just phenomenal, who she is like so much into that patient experience component that I've been able to say, like, I don't understand all of this stuff, but I need you to understand it really well and tell me what we should do. And she has just taken that by the tail and just like crushed it. And you saw that with your HR person of how important it is to hire well, and to give them some clarity in terms of, here's what we want. I'm not going to be as much an expert as you are in it, so you tell me how to make that happen, and here's kind of where we want to be.
And that's just the importance of creating that good team, right? A bunch of different people. I will always say nobody's role is more important than the other. But some people are really, 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 really good at their particular area, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some people ask me questions now and I'm like, I have no idea. Like, you can't expect me to know everything about everything. Ask.
It's a great feeling,
please,
isn't it? When you get to that point in your business where somebody asks you a question, you're just like, I actually have no idea. Talk to this person. They know way better than I do.
Yeah, you're not the Swiss Army knife anymore. You've gone from being a mile wide and superficially knowing a little bit about everything, and then getting to find yourself in the situation where I think a lot of people are trying to get to, that role where they're doing things they either like or they're good at. Hopefully, a mix of both. But if we peel back that a little bit more, and look specifically at things that people feel, right, but not necessarily see. That's what I will always kind of equate that to. We went through a period where we were writing down all of the little problems and questions people would have, and then we started to find ways to limit them. So now, like, having a mock patient balance statement or whatever gets mailed to them, and explicitly explaining every aspect of the statement, redlining it, having a little video where somebody's explaining
That's so good.
what to expect there. And it's just so good. And then you get less questions, and you start to get less and less and less questions. But Craig, before we cut off here, and this is part one for everybody who's out there, right? Craig and I talked, we're going to do a little bit of a COVID edition, and talk about the future of private practice, which I think we can agree is all going to look a little bit differently in the years to come, COVID or not even thinking about COVID. But to give some general advice for anybody out there who's maybe on the fence or going through PT school and thinks that they might want to be a private practice owner, what would you say?
You will never, even if you decide you don't want to get into private practice, you will never be upset about starting to build that social capital and starting to reach out to people. It will always be a positive thing. Even if you decide, I just want to find a really great job, as all goes, you've already built the social capital that helps you, whether it's within the PT profession, within a business realm, or just within your community in which you want to live and work and play. Any one of those, all of them, hopefully, will be incredibly powerful for you as a PT student, you coming out of school, you as a potential practice owner, if it's anything you ever want to do. So start building that social capital, reach out to people, understand what it is they would want and benefit from, understand their challenges and frustrations, and start to really think of looking at everything not from your perspective, but from theirs. And that's a really powerful skill set.
Craig, that's awesome advice. And I can't wait to continue the conversation. But just as a little bit of a bow on today's conversation, where can people connect with you? And also, if you don't mind steering them in the direction of the Private Practice Rebellion, that would be great too.
Yeah. So you can find me. I'm probably most active on Twitter, just at Craig Phifer, Phifer. And Private Practice Rebellion, that's the website, privatepracticerebellion.com, or you can connect with that on Instagram or on Facebook.
Perfect. Craig, appreciate your time today. Looking forward to part 2.
Thanks so much, Josh.